Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of how not to get divorced during lockdown. Always an interesting thing. So in part 1 we spoke about setting foundations, setting yourself up not to fail basically. Just a quick recap, we spoke about rules, we spoke about talk about money, talk about the bedroom, sex.
Intimacy.
Yeah, intimacy. Talk about what your goals are, what your expectations are, and what the reality is. So if you haven't watched that, it's highly recommended. In part 2, one of the things we're going to cover is when you do get frustrated, what do you do now? When you see your husband or your wife or your child or your whoever else is around in the home doing that same thing for the 30 millionth time and you can just explode. Clearly, I haven't done it, but I
No.
like.
No. In terms of the triggering, we call it triggers. When things happen and you feel that emotions start to rise up in you and you want to lash out at your spouse or child or whoever's in the home, what I always do and what we teach is we need to start with introspection. It is a case of before you blow up is to take a retreat, go lock yourself in the room and begin to unpack what it is that you're feeling. What is the emotion that you feel?
Yeah.
Why are you feeling that emotion? It's that understand in order to be understood.
Yeah.
Because how can you communicate to your spouse or to the other relevant person what you're feeling and why you're feeling it if you haven't discovered that for yourself yet? So it's a case of going into the room and saying, okay, that dish that's being put onto that counter for the 50 millionth time, and I have to go and put it into the dishwasher or I need to wash it. Why is that frustrating me and why is that irritating me and why is it triggering me? And then to sit in closed doors and to unpack that for yourself first.
Yeah, the dish might not be the best example because if you've done what we described in part 1, everyone would know what their roles are and what their responsibilities are, and if you're fulfilling that. But it's very important to understand the emotion that you're feeling, to deal with that, because else, if it's not the dish, it's going to be something else. It's going to be the shoes, or it's going to be the clothes, or it's going to be, there's always going to be something else until you understand the underlying emotion that's triggering you, that's getting you to that point.
I think another big thing that you need to realize is the spot that you've got it.
Yeah.
If you've spotted something, if you've been triggered, it's your responsibility to figure it out. It's not your spouse's responsibility to fix you. You need to fix yourself. If it is something that they're doing, you can then go and sit and chat to them and they can help you through that process, but you need to understand it first.
Yeah, this isn't time for the blame game.
No.
If you're going to be going around saying you do this wrong, you do that wrong, I wish you would do this, I wish you would do that, all you're doing is you're creating a bigger divide. You are causing separation, and that's not going to help you, that's not going to help your spouse, and it's not going to help your family as a whole in the home. The home is going to be an unpleasant place to be.
Another thing is when you get to the stage where you need to actually discuss it with your partner, is to go calm. It's get rid of that anger, get rid of that frustration. And then an example of how to do that is, for example, Henry, X, Y, and Z has been triggering me. This is the reason it has been triggering me.
Yes.
And I need help from your side to stop that trigger by doing X, Y, and Z. The important thing here is to come up with a solution on how the other person needs to fix the problem, or help you fix the problem because you've worked it through. It's not a case of for me to bombard Henry with my issues and to blow at him and then expect him to fix it, because 9 out of 10 times he didn't even know that he did something wrong. So it's about communicating it very calmly and without judgment. Without judgment. Remember, it's your responsibility to fix it, not the other person's.
Correct. What we found is if you come out with the accusation and you start creating a negative environment, what's really going to happen is your spouse is going to start behaving like you're treating them. They're going to feel a lot of animosity towards you. They're going to feel like a naughty school child that's being reprimanded. And more than likely, I know my personality, by nature, I will rebel. Doesn't make it right, but it makes it my nature. And I'm very aware of that, so I fight very hard against that rebellion in me. But the reality is, a lot of us are the same. The minute we'll just find something else. We see that with Vicky. She's only 2. But when she's in that streak of being naughty and you say no, she immediately, not even with a blink of an eye, but immediately she goes to the next thing that she knows is wrong because she's got that streak going. And in adults, yes, we've got a bit more control over it, but our mind is still the one that goes there.
Something else that's just popped into my head is sometimes people react negatively in order to get attention.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So if your spouse is acting negatively, how to diffuse that is to automatically come with something positive or reinforcing. It automatically diffuses the negativity from the other side. Because when you've got 2 negatives, you get a clash. And it just makes the situation worse. So if you're the calm party, is to come with a lot of love and a lot of understanding in order to defuse it. And maybe it is always you. I know in our relationship, you're generally the calm person, I'm not. So you tend to defuse my bombs quite often. But that is just the dynamic.
Absolutely. There's a lot of value in simply mirroring what your spouse is saying to you. There's a lot of value in looking at them and saying, hey, what's going on? Talk to me. Let me hear what your thoughts are. What's bothering you? The truth is, we're very scared to ask those questions because when we say, hey, what's bothering you? We're scared they say you. We don't want that because we just want the peace. But sometimes it's easier just to deal with it so that it's out in the open and then you can move on from that.
You often talk about that tower of accusation.
I love the tower of accusation. The tower of accusation is basically just the phrase which I've coined, we've coined, is where you take a lot of small things and then you put them on top of each other to make a big thing. So if the dish is not put away or isn't washed or whatever the case is, it's not really enough to have a good old-fashioned argument about. But if it's the dish and it's the door was left open and the blanket wasn't packed away and I can't think of any more examples.
The shoes are in the passage.
Shoes are in the passage. And now what I have is I've got this big tower. Now I've got enough to take you out. I can go there and I can say, you do this, you do that, you do that, you do that, and you have absolutely no defense. We tend to build a tower of accusation because we don't deal with the small things. So we put them there. So we say, oh, I'm going to remember that. Cool. That goes into the tower. I just saw that. I'm going to remember that. That goes into the tower. Until I've got the tower that's big enough to take you on, because I want to back up my argument. So be very careful of building your tower. Don't build a tower. Rather deal with each issue calmly, collectively, and get it out there and get it dealt with so that tower never gets anywhere.
A lot of these things, because we're in confinement now, are becoming a bigger reality. But I'm sure a lot of these problems we've seen with couples that we coach and in workshops. These are a lot of the problems that we have in the ordinary, and I'm sensing that this confinement is bringing a lot of stuff to the surface. So when you have those frustrations, just deal with them one by one. But remember to do the introspection. Remember to find out for yourself what has been bugging you and why it's been bugging you, and understand yourself. I think this is an amazing time to begin to do that introspection and get to know yourself better, but at the same time to know your spouse and whoever's in your household, whether it be your kids, grandkids, parents, whatever the case may be. So use this time to learn.
Now you're stuck in it. There's no escaping it.
Stuck in the middle.
There we go. Just where I want to be. This is where you can't go to work. You can't go to the shop quick. Yes, you can, but not as often as you like. You can't go for that walk. It's that time where you have to face it, where you can't sweep it under the carpet. And it's very important to deal with it very purposeful. So what you want to do is you want to identify the frustration. You want to go and do some introspection. You want to identify the underlying emotion. You want to make sense of it, and then you want to take it to your partner calmly, collectively, and say, this is what's been happening, and this is how it makes me feel, and this is why it makes me feel that way. And I can almost guarantee it, as soon as you have that conversation with your partner, it's going to mean a lot more to them to do or not do that thing that was irritating you than if you just had a shouting, screaming match with them.
Or you might understand from their perspective why they were doing it, and it might diffuse it too.
Absolutely. Sometimes something they're doing is irritating you, and they're doing it for a very valid reason.
Yeah.
So be careful of that as well, that you're not actually taking away something that your partner, that your spouse is holding very dear.
And don't be blinded by what you're always doing. Take notice of what everybody else is doing around you too. I know I'm guilty of that. I'm very guilty of that.
Yeah. Sometimes you're so focused in your task that if everyone's not doing your task, they're irritating you. The other thing to really look at is look for what they're doing right. Look for those good things that are happening. Look at when they are putting that dish in the dishwasher or washing it or packing it away or whatever. The poor dish is going to feel very abused at the end of this. but the reality is look at those things that are happening when they should happen. You can't keep on negatively reinforcing people, because then you're going to create the negative environment. There needs to be a positive flow as well.
And then just a lot of these things are very broad. Henry and I do a lot of online coaching, marriage coaching. So if you're wanting to get in touch with us, please do so. Like our Facebook page, Doing Marriage with Henry and Lindy. Otherwise, pop us a message or pop us an email at doingmarriagewithhnl@gmail.com.
That's the one, yes.
Yep. Pop us a mail, and we are available to do some online coaching with you if you need it.
Yeah, and stay tuned for the third part in this series, where we're going to look at some practical solutions on things to do, how to create a positive environment, how to create a positive marriage in this time. But these things, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, aren't just isolated to now. Lundy said it, it's very condensed right now, you're really in the situation right now, but these are things that you can carry forward into everyday life as soon as we get out of these houses. See you next time.